Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We are in the midst of the second round now, I would say, Sap. Is it fair to say the midst of it, the middle-ish?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, right now, we'd need sweeps in all these series to technically be in the middle of it all, right?
But it hasn't been competitive, so it's been the midst.
Not only the series haven't been competitive, Jet, the games haven't been competitive. But you know what? This has always been an issue with the NBA playoffs. I know people in my generation, and again, I'm 58 years old and very proud of it. I am the world's oldest millennial, adopted by you millennials. Mm-hmm. It was like this in the 80s. I mean, you go back to the Lakers and Celtics meeting in the NBA Finals 3 times in a 4-year period. There were a lot of blowouts in those games as well. I mean, in 1985, Game 1 was the Memorial Day Massacre, which the Celtics won by, I believe, 39 or 40 points, and then the Lakers came back and won the series. We remember Game 6 in 2008. The Celtics won by 39 to win their first championship since 1986. Because this isn't the Tour de France. So if you get down by 20 points in the third quarter, what's the point of making this comeback that falls short? Just get ready for the next game. It's almost like in tennis. If you're down 5-1 on grass to Roger Federer in the second set, you're not going to make a comeback and beat him, mail it in at that point and start the third set, because that's when, the match really gets going. I don't believe that these, far-fetched comebacks that fall 7 points short, unless you bet the game, are all that important. So we do see blowouts, but we've seen blowouts for years in the NBA playoffs. So I think it's just something to get used to.
I just think it's, especially with the Bucks and the Nuggets, they haven't shown any signs of life. That's the problem. Like, a blowout's one thing, but in both games, the Nuggets have gotten blown out twice by Phoenix, and the Bucks have gotten obliterated twice by a not even at full strength Nets team. I just haven't seen any sign of life from either of them. I mean, Giannis played well in their first game. Jokic played well in this recent game. I mean, by his standards, I guess it's about average. But other than that, you haven't really seen any true signs of competitiveness from either Denver or Milwaukee.
No, you really haven't. And that's kind of disturbing, because we expected those series to be really competitive. But now maybe they'll turn when it goes to Denver and Milwaukee, respectively, both down 2-0. They had better win Game 3, or we're looking at 2 sweeps here. It is kind of frustrating to watch that, but that's the history of the NBA. We even see this in a Philly-Atlanta series, which is tied at 1 game apiece. I mean, Philly made a big comeback towards the end of Game 1, and that wasn't a comeback that was wasted, because they came damn close to almost pulling that game off, which would have, I think, led to a sweep of the Atlanta Hawks. Right. So they cut it close. They just couldn't hit their free throws, which is a concern with them. Specifically, Ben Simmons can't hit his free throws. But then the next game, they blow out Atlanta. The Clippers made a comeback to make it close against Utah, and now we'll see what happens in Game 2. So, they haven't been competitive. It almost looks like Milwaukee in the first 2 games just looked across the court and said, damn, that team's better than us. And they don't even have their second best player in James Harden, and actually the guy who I thought was their most important player this year in James Harden. And look at what Brooklyn's doing against us. So, Milwaukee, I would expect will come back in Game 3 and play better. They had better. I can't see them playing any worse. They're shooting below 25% from 3. They're a good 3-point shooting team. Your fringe players tend to play better at home. Maybe that's going to happen when Milwaukee turns home. They got to do something quickly in Game 3, or this series is going to be over quickly.
Yeah, I mean, they need like an exorcism or something, because it's nice. It's nice to be at home, Sap, but is being at home worth 40 points? Because that's what they lost by in the last game, 39. Yeah. So create your comforts, and not being able to sleep in your own bed, not having to travel as much, having the home fan behind you. That's all nice. It's not worth that many points. I mean, there's no home court advantage that's worth that many points.
No, I mean, is Giannis all of a sudden going to be as an efficient scorer as Kevin Durant? No, they could be playing that in Athens, Greece, and that would not be the case. I mean, Durant's just better, and Giannis occasionally struggles because, he doesn't have the wide variance of game like Kevin Durant. It's kind of surprising that's what we've seen. I mean, even last night, sit down, it was the sole game of the night. You expected Denver to play better than they did. Phoenix just is on a roll, Jet. I tweeted this out earlier at JohnSap25. at one point in the Lakers series, Phoenix was down 2-1, and they were down 11 points 3 minutes in the second quarter. At that point, and it was a week ago Sunday, I'm sitting there saying, okay, the Lakers are in total control of this series. They had lost game 1, but they won games 2 and 3 fairly comfortably, and they were up 11 3 minutes into the second quarter. And I'm like, this series is pretty much over. Well, since that point going forward, Jet, the Phoenix Suns have outscored their opponents by 104 points, 548 to 444, and that's over a 225-minute period. It seems like something just clicked for them at that point. It also didn't hurt them that Anthony Davis got hurt later in the second quarter. But since that point forward, they've been the best team in basketball. They've been even more impressive than Brooklyn. They get out to leads quickly, and you know what? They don't even let the other team get close, partly because they play defense. They're not a great defensive team, but they're a damn good defensive team, and they don't turn the ball over. Look at Chris Paul in these first 2 games against Denver, Jet. 26 assists, 1 turnover.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like Aaron Rodgers MVP type of season where he throws 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. This is even a better ratio. 26 assists to 1 turnover. A lot of the great passers in the league, whether it be LeBron or Luka or even Joker or James Harden, they will make some errors on offense and will have 3 or 4 or 5 turnovers in a given night. They're great passers. This guy is a great passer, but he's also very, very careful with the basketball. I'm so impressed with Phoenix because, like I said, since that point against the Lakers, when it looked like the Lakers were taking a hold of that series, some switch went off on the Phoenix Suns bench, on the court, whatever. And since then, they've been unbeatable.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's that if Chris Paul's getting healthier, which seems hard to believe that, it's a shoulder injury. It shouldn't get better as he's playing more. It should get worse, but he's statistically been better. And he looks healthier. I can't really make medical sense of it, but, good for Phoenix, good for Chris Paul. It's working out. It's led to a lot of strange discussions on social media and Chris Paul specifically, Sap. I'm seeing this. Like, some people are like, it's embarrassing that Chris Paul, didn't finish in the top 3 for MVP voting. Well, no, it's not. He didn't deserve it this year. He was great, but he missed plenty of time. And then other people saying, I think Skip Bayless said today he's not even a top 15 point guard of all time, which is insane. So it's like people just over or underreact to it. It's, I mean, I don't know if Chris Paul in particular is a lightning rod or just this time of year where there's just really only NBA topics to talk about that people just are going to throw out wild opinions. But it's not absurd that Chris Paul didn't finish in top 3. He's MVP. He shouldn't have. And it's absurd to say he's not a top 15 point guard of all time because he's well ahead of top 15. That's crazy.
Of course. Yeah, both things are crazy, right? And I know Skip Bayless, who is a professional troll to the point of $8 million a year, which is great if you can pull that off. And then other people I know, like Colin Cowherd, thinks he should have won the MVP. You can make some sort of outlandish case for that because of the leadership. Be on a show
together. Cowherd,
they
and
would
Skip
be
Bayless.
Great together. They would just like butt heads, which would be a lot of fun. And Cowherd makes, I think, $7 million a year. And you know what?
Cowherd
those guys.
Paul is a better player than Embiid right now. So, I mean.
Yeah, right. He has Embiid as the 10th best player in the postseason or most impactful player in the postseason. I'm like, has he watched any Philadelphia games? The man is unstoppable. He's the most unstoppable low post force or big man since Shaq in his heyday.
So we got two polar opposites here of Chris Paul.
Completely opposites. And I just think part of it is because Chris Paul's now in his 16th year. It almost feels like this is the first time people are actually watching him, right? Like, this is Chris Paul. He's a great player. He's the closest thing to Isaiah Thomas since the great Pistons player retired 25 plus years ago. That's who he reminds me the most of. He's a great defensive player. I said it on our last podcast. Chris Paul is the best small defensive player in league history. If you're going to go 6'1" and shorter, he's the best defensive player in that group. I know it's kind of a niche group, but that is certainly the case. He's a great leader. He doesn't turn the ball over. He can score when you need him to. Every place he goes, the team wins. Do you realize he has a higher winning percentage than Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant in his career in games played? Slightly better winning percentage than Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant.
That's remarkable.
In the regular season. Now, the postseason's been different, but he hasn't played with a lot of great players. Yeah, he played with James Harden, but that didn't seem to fit. I mean, is Blake Griffin really an all-time great? No. Whereas Kobe played with Shaq and Kevin Durant played with, Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry, and now he's playing with James Harden and Kyrie Irving. And here's Chris Paul in his careers had a better winning percentage during the regular season, and he's never really gone to great situations. Remember his first 2 years in New Orleans? They played their home games in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that's right.
Then he's with
Katrina.
Then he's with New Orleans, and he carried them as far as he could. He goes to the Clippers. The Clippers have always been one of the worst run organizations in basketball. Now with Steve Ballmer as the owner, they're much better. Then he goes to Houston. It didn't really work with James Harden, although they did win 67 games one year, made it to the conference finals. Then he goes to Oklahoma City, where they're blatantly tanking, and he gets them to the number 5 seed last year. And here's Phoenix, a team that hasn't been at the postseason in 11 years. And I think they're going to go to the finals. They look to me like the most well-rounded team in the Western Conference. So is he a real MVP candidate? Yeah, outside, I would say that, like on the fringe, maybe 5th or 6th, which was where he finished. Did he have a more impactful year than Jokic, Embiid, or Steph Curry? No, I don't think he did. Those guys put up ridiculous numbers. With Chris Paul, it was more like the Steve Nash MVP years, where the numbers were really good and the team was really successful. But are those really MVP type years? Not really. But then for Skip Bayless to come out and say Tony Parker is better than Chris Paul is absurd. Tony Parker got to play with Tim Duncan.
Got a huge boner for the Spurs.
Of course. I mean, they did win 5 championships, not all with Tony Parker. He was a big part of actually 4 of them. Actually, he was a big part of them, right? The first one, Parker and Ginobili weren't there. They were there for the last 4. But, I mean, Tony Parker was playing with Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, playing for Greg Popovich, maybe the best coach in the history of the league. He's never been the best
player on his team. Chris Paul's been the best player on a bunch of teams.
And Chris Paul's dragged like mediocre teams to at least the second round of the postseason.
I love Tony Parker, but that's stupid.
No,
I mean, that's really
a stupid
dumb
thing. Yeah, and and again, now you start to differentiate from point guards and shooting guards. And to me, there's almost like 3 sets of guards. There's the true point guards, which yes, Chris Paul's that. Isaiah Thomas is that. They're the real floor generals, right? Magic Johnson, although he was huge at 6'9". Yeah. Then you've got the true shooting guards. Jason Kidd, point guard, even though 6'4". Then you have the shooting guards, which, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Those are the first 2 that come to mind. Dwayne Wade. I always put Jerry West in there, but some people will push back and say Jerry West was a point guard. But then you have other guys who don't really fit either category. Like, I don't look at Steph Curry and say point guard. He's too good a shooter and scorer to be just a point guard, right? I mean, so he's a guard. So you can have almost these 3 different categories. No, Chris Paul to me is I'd say top 5, 6, 7 in that range. If he gets to the finals, then he's pretty much cemented in there. But he's not going to surpass Magic Johnson, who I have at number 1 as point guard, followed by Oscar Robertson, who somehow everyone seems to forget. And I know you have to be 55 years old or older to remember him playing. Curry would be 3rd and Isaiah Thomas 4th. Those are the 4 best point guards in the history of the NBA, in my opinion, leaving Jerry West out as a shooting guard. And then Chris Paul gets to get in that discussion. But you're right. It's almost as if people didn't really get a chance to see Chris Paul. I think kind of lapsed NBA fans or lukewarm NBA fans don't really know much about Chris Paul. I think guys like us that, watch all the games and are really invested in it appreciate how great this player is. He's almost like that great actor that gets nominated, doesn't quite win an Oscar, but he's an actor's actor. Like one of those guys who every time he's in a movie just makes it better, but he's not quite Daniel Day-Lewis or Robert De Niro or Jack Nicholson. You know what I'm saying? He's a great actor, but he's not quite at the highest level.
Yeah, and he's just such a steady player. He's not putting on those incredible, highlights. He's not throwing insane passes like LeBron, or I don't even know if he can dunk. So he's not putting up
barely
those,
if he can, yeah.
But I mean, he's just so efficient and good at everything he does.
Yeah.
I look at it also as that, obviously he's done the State Farm commercials. He's famous, but Oklahoma City, very small market. New Orleans, very small market. The Clippers were the secondary team in LA.
Yep.
Houston is a big market. So that was really, I think, his first big market, like premier team. I know LA is a big market, but the Clippers aren't that big in LA. No. That's just a fact. And now Phoenix, not that big of a market. It's not like he's played on these marquee teams or even marquee franchises. The Rockets are the only franchise he's played for that has a history of championships.
Of winning championships. Yeah, great point, Jet. And the other thing, too, with Chris Paul, it seems like in the State Farm commercials, he's not even the most famous person named Paul. His fictional brother, Cliff Paul, seems to be a bigger star in those commercials, right? I mean, whereas with Aaron Rodgers, it's Aaron Rodgers in the State Farm commercials. And I think both of those guys do a great job. And actually, they're somewhat similar as personalities. They can be prickly, difficult to play with, acerbic, know-it-alls. And sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. But he's gone to Phoenix, and they've really embraced him. And I think part of it is Devin Booker, who'd been in the league for several years, was putting up great numbers, had made an all-star team. But he realized that, he needed a true leader on that team. And I think that Chris Paul has made him a better player, and he's made DeAndre Ayton a better player. He even said after one of the games that he said DeAndre Ayton's our MVP. So Chris Paul's at the point at 36. He's the same age as LeBron James. The only thing left for him to do is to get to a finals. Now, if he plays Brooklyn, there'll be a prohibitive underdog, but at least he gets there. Then the entire nation can see what a great player this is. Because I think he's an all-time great. And he's really grown on me the last several years because I just see him go to teams and they just get better when he shows up, and the teams he left got worse. I mean, that's something that you can pin on a player and give him credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I think last night you could certainly make the case that he was the best player on the court in a game where, Jokic did still put up 24, 13, and 6 and is the MVP and, got the award the other day. Paul was just so efficient, 17 points, 15 assists, no turnovers. I mean, 5 rebounds too to boot. So
incredible.
Phoenix is certainly rolling. They're looking really good. Sap, that was the only game on last night. We do have 2 tonight. As it stands currently, the Nets are up 2-0, and they have really just blown the doors off of Milwaukee in both of those games. The Clippers and the Jazz are the Jazz are winning 1-0. So the second game in this series is tonight at 10 Eastern, as the Clippers will look to try to even it up. Sap, obviously it's a do or die game for the Bucks. The Clippers have a little bit more wiggle room because, I don't think people are expecting them to take a game in Utah necessarily.
Right. And who knows with the Clippers, it seems like they play better on the road than they do at home anyway, right? They were 3-0 in Dallas and 1-3 at Staples Center. So the Clippers, who are at times the most perplexing team in all of basketball, because there's moments where they look like the best team in basketball, and there's other moments where they just kind of run away from the moment. Milwaukee has to win this game. That goes without saying. They're down 2-0. And now I think it's a legacy moment for Giannis. Look, there shouldn't be any reason he can't put up 35, 40 points against this Brooklyn team, right? I mean, he did it in the regular season. They don't have a real rim protector. Brooklyn doesn't. He should be able to get to the basket. Again, I've said this a million times. I'm not sure why he's the primary ball handler on this team. I would get him on the low post, maybe run, pick and roll with him and have him flash to the rim where I think I could hit him with a lob pass and it would be dunked because he's got such an incredible wingspan. Like, do something creative besides let him bring the ball up the court. Watch Blake Griffin give him 6 feet and Giannis chucking up 18 to 22 footers, which he's just not good at. He's never going to develop an outside shot. It looks ugly. Again, I've compared him to a giant version of Russell Westbrook. That's the book on Russell Westbrook. Let him beat you from the outside. He can't. And the same thing with Giannis. You're not going to give him a lane to the basket because he's unstoppable at 6'11", 250 pounds with that athletic ability.
Yeah, he's got to dominate. And so I've been seeing some things, I think, today that I think are a little unfair, saying, obviously you don't want to get swept. And people saying, and you just said it's a legacy game for him too. I don't know what more. In game 2, he was bad. In game 1, I don't know what more he could have done. He dominated in that game. He won his individual matchups. His teammates just let him down. So I look at that as we're forgetting about game 1 very quickly. Now, if he has another game tonight, like he did in game 2, then I think it's fair to say, man, this guy just can't break through. But what else was he supposed to do in game 1? I mean, he had a monster stat line. And his teammates just couldn't hit a 3 to save their lives. So I don't really know that that's fair to put on Giannis. Now, again, tonight, if he stinks, and like he did in game 2, and he's missing his free throws, he's missing his shot, he's not getting to the basket, I think it's fair to criticize him. But he's had one great game and one poor game. So to say, his legacy is on the line tonight, I don't necessarily think that that's fair. Listen, we know the Bucks have to win tonight. Can't go down 3-0. No team's ever come back for that in the NBA. But I expect him to play well tonight. And I think it's going to come down to, as it always does with Milwaukee, how his teammates are going to play. Can Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday start hitting their shots? Can guys step up and provide extra offense so Giannis is able to do what Giannis does. If you have Giannis being quadruple teamed because other guys can't hit their shots, well, then Giannis isn't going to be able to get his stats because nobody outside of Kevin Durant can survive being quadruple teamed.
Right.
That's just how it goes.
And the issue here is, and I don't mean to beat on Giannis, I really like him. I like him so much. I just like the personality. He seems like a great guy. I mean, to do what he's done, to come from where he was to where he is now, is just a remarkable story. It's so unique. The problem is, on the other side of the court is right now the best player in basketball. And I know I'm always pushing that LeBron's the best player in basketball, and I still think that's the case because he can do so many things. But what's left playing in the playoffs right now, the best player in basketball is Kevin Durant, and he's so damn consistent and efficient. It's like he puts up 32 points in his sleep without taking a lot of shots. You know, at the end of the game, you go, wow, that guy had 32 points. He was 12 of 16 from the floor. I mean, imagine if Kevin Durant came out one night and had the mentality of Luka or Donovan Mitchell, that he's adamant that he's going to take 35 shots. I mean, he could break Jordan's record for the most points in a postseason game. I don't even doubt that, but that's not really what he does. He's so efficient, and he's willing to share the ball with Kyrie. And then when Harden's healthy, and then you get Joe Harris involved with wide open threes, and it gets kind of scary trying to beat that Brooklyn team. But that's part of the issue. I mean, as great as Giannis is, the guy on the other side is just playing at a level right now that we really haven't seen much of anyone in the history of this sport. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. There just aren't a lot of dudes that we've seen in the postseason shooting nearly 60% from the floor, 50% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. That just doesn't even make sense, right? That feels like numbers you'd put up at the Y playing against people a foot shorter than you. That's the kind of dominance that Kevin Durant has had. So in comparison, it really hinders Giannis. But I get that he had a great game one and a poor game two. And look, he could have had a great game two. They still were going to lose. No one else showed up. They're shooting less than 25% from three as a team. They're a real good three-point shooting team. They haven't been in this series. They defend the three pretty well. They haven't in this series. We'll see if Milwaukee can bounce back here. Now you put the Nets on their heels a little bit. Here's the thing in facing the Nets, same thing when facing Golden State for, that 5-year period when they were into the finals every year. Just get in a close game with 4 minutes left. You can beat them. And I say the same thing about the Clippers. Get to a close game late. I think you can beat them. I don't think Brooklyn has a lot of reps playing in close games. So,
right.
We saw them lose a couple of close games in the regular season to Milwaukee. I think if you can get them down to the last 4 minutes and it becomes a one-possession game, you can beat them. Hell, the Celtics beat them, right, in game 3 at TD Garden. Yeah. Of course, you needed Tatum to put up 50 points, but Giannis is capable of putting up 45 or 50 points. And in theory, he has a better supporting cast than Jason Tatum. Just get it close to the finish. They almost have a feel like the 99 to 2001 Rams, the greatest show on turf. Just get them in a close game in the fourth quarter. I don't know how they're going to react because they don't play in many close games.
Right. See what happens.
That's what you got to do. Get through the first 44 minutes, get it to 4 minutes in a 1 or 2 possession game. I think you can beat them, but that's asking a lot.
I think that for Milwaukee, I would almost play into that strategy of how you were talking about Durant, that it's not like he's passive, but that he's, not going to take 40 shots and saying, let's force him to do it. Let's shut down Kyrie. Let's shut down Joe Harris, Blake Griffin, whatever. Don't worry. There's no defending Kevin Durant. It's not even worth wasting energy on. Let's focus on shutting down these other guys and then saying, KD, do something that you're not necessarily comfortable doing, which is, being that really selfish guy and taking all those shots. Maybe that screws with the Nets. I don't know, but whatever the Bucks are doing defensively is not working. And I think that they have the best defensive roster in basketball. And I mean, they're just getting their doors blown off. So change it up. They have to do something different. They can't just say, well, hopefully we'll hit threes because we're at home. They have to do more than that in order to beat Brooklyn.
Is this almost like the strategy teams had in the early 2000s against Barry Bonds? Let's just walk him. Let's not let him beat us. Same thing with Kevin Durant. It kind of almost to the opposite of Kevin Durant. Like, let him go ahead and take 30 shots. If he gets 50, so be it. But we get Kyrie out of his comfort zone, and Joe Harris is not a factor, and you win the game. I mean, I remember in the 80s when I was covering the NBA and the Celtics specifically, and Jordan was putting up huge numbers against the Celtics, wasn't able to break through because, quite frankly, Jordan was playing with me, you, and a couple of pictures that you have behind you. Essentially, was what was on his team before Scottie Pippen showed up. And Casey Jones said, yeah, when we would play the Lakers, we kind of knew Elgin Baylor was going to go get 45. The key is not let someone else get 25 or 18 and have that type of balance.
To
the
Brooklyn,
problem. Yeah.
to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about Durant. I mean,
No.
seriously, just throw up your hands. You can't. You can't stop him. You can't slow him down. So, like I'm saying, it's not worth expending a ton of energy and focus and game plan on trying to slow him down. There's no slowing him down. It doesn't matter.
No.
But you can't let. If he's gonna beat you by himself, God bless him. Great. He's gonna get 60. Okay, he got 60. You just tip your cap. But you can't let Blake Griffin and Joe Harris and Bruce Brown, all these guys put up big numbers on
James,
you.
Mike
You have
James
no chance. You have no chance.
Mike James was on the street, and any team in the league could have had him. Yeah, and then Kyrie does what he does, and wait till Harden comes back. And, oh, by the way, Jeff Green hasn't played. So, I mean, it's that's what makes it scary.
Kyrie can have bad games. You can force him to having a bad game.
Durant's almost incapable of having one.
He's immune to it. Immune to it.
It is. He's just got too many ways to score. If he's not hitting his three, he'll drive to the basket. If that's being shut off, well, then he'll figure something else out.
So worry about the other stuff. That's what I'm saying, Seth.
Yeah. Let him. And Durant, who I think if he ever put his mind to it, I don't think he'd ever break Chamberlain's record. That just doesn't seem approachable. But I mean, if he had the Kobe Bryant mentality of like, okay, I'm going to take all the shots tonight, the guy could make a run at 100 points because he's so
he could break Kobe's
efficient. He could, the 81. I don't doubt that in the least. The funny thing is about
he'll never do it.
He'll never do it. That's not, man. If he had his former teammates' attitude of like get out of my way, and Russell Westbrook, who couldn't, Durant can shoot left-handed better than Westbrook can shoot right-handed. Durant's all-time career high is 53. Doesn't that seem odd?
Like, he values the efficiency of it. He's
so
he doesn't want to
efficient.
take bad shots because he figures, why do I have to? I can just get a good shot here.
Get any shot I want. No, the guy's amazing. And like I said, right now, there's 8 teams remaining. He's the best player. I don't even think it's close right now. Kawhi's awesome, but Kawhi's defense isn't what it was 5 years ago because they asked him to do more offensively. This guy is damn scary. It's like one step over half court, he's in shooting range.
Of the guys left to me, it's pretty clearly the top 3 are Durant, Kawhi, and Embiid. I think pretty clearly the 3 guys who are the best players left.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that game tonight, Sap, is Milwaukee's actually favored by 3.5 points, even though they lost by 39 their last game. What do you say with this one?
I like Milwaukee tonight because the line almost doesn't make any sense. Brooklyn was only 1.5 at home, so the lines makers essentially telling you that Milwaukee's still the better team, which before the series started, I picked them in 7, not looking too good right now. Milwaukee's going to come up big tonight. The key is getting off to that fast start and then putting the pressure on Brooklyn because nobody plays better with the lead than Brooklyn. They'll build a 15-point lead and they're on cruise control at that point. So you got to get them down, maybe pressing a little bit, get that home crowd, which, again, it's not a sellout, but you're going to still have some fans in the building in Milwaukee. And then your secondary players start to hit threes. Now you're going to feel more comfortable. That's the key. Look, every game we could sit here and say which team shoots better from 3 is going to win because that's normally the case in the NBA. I do like Milwaukee tonight. They'll get back in this series, at least for the moment.
I've always said this, Sep. When a really good jump shooting team has a double-digit lead, it's almost impossible to come back on them. If you're an efficient jump shooting team and you get out to a double-digit lead in the second half, it's a real tall task to try to come back from. And Brooklyn is an excellent jump shooting team. I will take Milwaukee too because I think Brooklyn doesn't really care about this game. They don't have that let's just end it mentality. I don't think they do. I think they're just like, we're better than everybody else. We'll if they win this game, we'll just win the next 2, whatever. And Milwaukee's desperate, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'll take Milwaukee. I'll take them. I'll take the 3.5 as well. I think that they'll win by around 5 to 7 points.
Yeah, I think they'll win by double digits. But again, that's asking a lot. But we're both in agreement that Milwaukee's going to win and cover tonight.
All right. And the other game tonight, Sap, is the Clippers and Jazz, which we've devoted virtually no time so far to this series. But let's quickly talk about because to end the show, we're going to do a poll that you ran. How great Donovan Mitchell was in the last game. and how I mean, he's just so impactful to this team. Gobert just won Defensive Player of the Year. Everybody wants to talk about Gobert. Donovan Mitchell's the best player on the team. He's the straw that stirs the drink. He's the leader of that team. They go as far as he can carry them, which appears to be a long way. He put up, I think, 45 was it in the last game, Sap? And this
32 in the second half. 32 points in the second half.
Last year in the bubble, he was doing this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
He takes it to another level in the playoffs, which is what you would hope your star player can do. And Mitchell's shown he's capable of doing that. So listen, we know how good of a team Utah is, but if they get Donovan Mitchell to play like the best player on the court, which he was the other night against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, Donovan Mitchell was the best player in the court, then Utah can potentially, we were talking about a legitimate finals team.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad everyone's catching on to what we've been talking about for a couple of years now. He's the closest thing we've seen to Dwayne Wade. And it's kind of cool that Dwayne Wade is a minority owner of the Utah Jazz, sitting courtside the other night with his lovely significant other, Gabrielle Union, and kind of giving a little advice to Donovan Mitchell, whose favorite player growing up was Dwayne Wade. That's kind of a cool story to me. He plays so much like Dwayne Wade. I think he's a little bit better as a perimeter shooter, not quite as big and strong and athletic as Dwayne Wade. I mean, Dwayne Wade was a couple inches taller, around 6'3.5", 6'4". Mitchell's about 6'1.5", but both very, very strong, aggressive players. No one's as dirty as Dwayne Wade. And Dwayne Wade was one of the dirtiest players in league history, but he did it with such a smile, and you couldn't help but like the guy because he was such a big game player that you didn't like it, obviously, being a Celtic. I mean, didn't he almost break Rajon Rondo's arm in postseason? He broke Kobe Bryant's nose in an All-Star game. So, I mean, but as a player, we all agree Dwayne Wade is an all-time great. And Mitchell has a lot of that ability in him. I don't think he's quite Dwayne Wade, but he's pretty darn close to it. And he's not necessarily the most efficient scorer, but he's one of those guys you can look the other way when it comes to that, because in big moments, he's not afraid to take the big shot. And he can really put together like 6 and 8 minute stretches that are breathtaking. I mean, he scored 32 in the second half.
But when he gets hot, that's ridiculous. Look out.
Look out. And he's got a lot of ways to score. And again, for a guy that's 6'1.5", he gets to the basket, and he's aggressive going to the basket. He's got a nice mid-range game. No, he's a sensational player. And again, one of the many great young stars in this league that's really easy to root for. Went to Louisville, didn't come out with a lot of accolades. I mean, he's a mid-first round pick. I think 13th in the first round. And, right away, he was outstanding with the Utah Jazz, and give a lot of credit to Quinn Snyder. That guy's probably the most overlooked coach in the NBA, right? I mean, we're talking about Thibodeau won Coach of the Year. Monty Williams did a great job in Phoenix. The other finalist for Coach of the Year was Quinn Snyder. They had the best record in basketball this year, and he's a big part of that. But, Mitchell's sensational.
Wire to wire, too.
Wire to wire. I mean, really, other than when Mitchell was out for a period of time, they were just really consistently on top of things. They play good defense. They shoot threes. They had a bad night shooting threes in game one, and they still were able to beat the Clippers. That's why I think they'll take hold of this series and win again tonight. I think the fatigue factor is going to hit the Clippers even more tonight than it did in game one. In that high altitude, coming off that 7-game series against Dallas, they got off to a good start in game one, the Clippers did, but they were out of gas by the second half, and I think that's going to happen again tonight. And I expect the perimeter shooters of Utah to have a better night tonight than they had, and that'll open up things for Donovan Mitchell again, maybe not to put up 45, but he'll be up around 30. He's nearly a 30 points per game scorer in the postseason in his career. He's only behind Durant and LeBron James career scoring among all active players that have played a significant amount of games.
Sep, that's what I said.
He does.
I mean, the true best players take it to another level in the postseason in any sport. It's not exclusive to basketball. In any sport, when you're in the postseason, you elevate your game. That's what you want. Mitchell's shown he's had the ability to do that, and he did it again in game one. Utah's just a very well-constructed team. It's not easy to construct a team in Utah because you're not getting premier free agents, but they have guys that complement their players so well because they shoot threes or play defense. They have specialties. Like we talked about the other day how Portland has like no 3-and-D guys. Utah's freaking loaded with them. I mean,
they really
loaded with them.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of guys who are excellent 3-point shooters, excellent defensive players. They have, a guy like Clarkson who can come off the bench and put up 40. If you need a 40-point game off the bench, he's done it before. They're just a really well-constructed team. So the Clippers, The Clippers, if they play to their potential, should beat them, but they have yet to play to their potential in 2 years. So I think Utah wins this game tonight too, Sep.
Yeah, I do. I think they win this game. They win this series. You can look at Luka and Donovan Mitchell, and I think Luka's the better player. I mean, he's bigger. He can do more things. But as a scorer, they're both elite. The difference is that Donovan Mitchell has a better supporting cast than Luka. So, if he's off on a given night, he's got other players that he can go to, like Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench is explosive. Gobert's not a great offensive player, but he's a great defensive player. And again, they're so well coached. But I like Utah in this game and in this series, because this is a team no one talked about. Yeah, I think they're going to cover. I think they'll win tonight. They didn't technically cover the last game because they were 3.5-point favorite and they won by 3. So the zigzag is saying take Utah tonight. So I'm going to go Utah minus the 3 tonight.
I'll take Utah as well, Sap. Last thing before we get out of here, I know you ran a poll between Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker, just a linear choice. Do you know the results of the poll yet? Or are they still incoming?
I do. It's 2/3 Donovan Mitchell, which really isn't a surprise because I ran the poll the other night. So, you put all the hashtags on it. So people watching Donovan Mitchell put up 45 were probably like, oh, yeah, Donovan Mitchell's better than Devin Booker. I think it's a pretty good discussion. I think they're both really great young players. They're just outside the top 10. Like everyone now is talking about, okay, who's the top 10 players in the league? I'd say Mitchell and Booker are just outside of that, along with, say, Jason Tatum. And these are 3 guys that are all relatively the same age, although Tatum is younger than those 2 guys. And I would take Jason Tatum over both because of his high ceiling. The guy is 6'9". I mean, that's a tiebreaker to me. I'll take the 6'9" guy over the 6'5" guy. And I'll also take the 6'5" guy over the 1.5-inch guy. I think I'm developing a man crush on Devin Booker. I don't know. Maybe it's his ties to the Kardashians or whatever.
Maybe, yeah.
I just love watching him play. He's another guy. He's more efficient than Mitchell. He doesn't play with the fire that Mitchell plays with. I don't think he's the leader Mitchell is, but he doesn't have to be because he's got Chris Paul. I think it's a fascinating matchup, and hopefully we'll see these 2 guys in the Western Conference Finals going mano a mano. You know what? You can't go wrong with either one. When in doubt, I'll take the guy that's bigger if they're almost of equal talent, and I think they are.
Yeah, I take Mitchell because I think he makes his teammates better. Obviously Booker is still young, but before Chris Paul came there, Phoenix had no success with just Devin Booker. He had some individual success and accolades, and Donovan Mitchell's gotten the Jazz to playoffs every year he's been in the NBA. So I think Mitchell loves the competition and saying, okay, you're going to put up 40. I'm going to put up 40. I think he lives for that sort of stuff. I just love his basketball mentality more. I think that he's the type of guy you could throw into any team and they're probably going to make the playoffs because he'll just will them to do it. I don't know if Devin Booker can. I like Devin Booker a lot. I just like Mitchell a little bit more. So for me, I would take Donovan Mitchell. I'm
not surprised because he's more your style player. He's more emotional, right? More combative. Devin Booker almost feels so smooth out there, right? He's almost there's a little Jason Tatum in him.
And remember, both these guys were not top picks. So, similar coming out of college that they were, neither one of them were high picks, and they both made a lot of teams regret it.
And they came apart 1 year into the league. I think Booker came in 2016, the same year as Jaylen Brown. And then Mitchell came in the same year as Jason Tatum. And look, the Celtics did just fine with Jaylen Brown and
they were both Tatum. The 13th pick, Sap.
Booker was the 13th pick?
13th pick, in his year.
Wow. Yep. I don't want to get into Danny Ainge again because he's no longer the president of basketball operations, but 13th pick, you can find someone. Apparently Danny Ainge, when it's the 14th pick, can't find someone. I don't know if that's the line of demarcation that you after the 13th pick.
I think Aaron Nesmith's the next Devin Booker.
Yeah, exactly. They very similar players.
Both shooters out of the SEC, Sap.
That's about it. Yeah, one went to Kentucky and one went to Vanderbilt. Big difference.
Same, basically the same level of success at those programs.
At least Donovan Mitchell was in the same state as Devin Booker playing at Louisville.
Skip Bayless went to Vanderbilt, Sap. How dare you?
Yeah, that's why he probably thinks that Aaron Nesmith's going to be better than, I don't know, Scottie Pippen for all we know, because he has to bash Pippen to make Jordan sound better. So that's part of his thing.
All right, Sap. That's going to do it for us at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking, doing some lightning round stuff, talking about some news around the NBA and getting you geared up for the next round of next matchups in the second round of the playoffs, I should say. Make sure you stay tuned to our Twitters so you know when the latest shows come out, at JohnSap25 and at Jet Stryer. The YouTube version of this show, if you're not watching on YouTube, is youtube.com/Jet Stryer. We'll talk to you tomorrow, everybody. See ya.